the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Atlantic Division, I think that they need to win the division in order to have a shot to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Today is March 12th, 2025. Welcome to the Checking from Behind podcast. I'm your host, Zach, as always, joined by my co-host, Preston. We're in that home stretch now. The trade deadline's over. We're getting into the thick of the playoff race between the Eastern Conference, which has surprisingly been pretty decent, except one team we'll get into in a second, and then the Western Conference between the Central Division race and then the wild card race, which we've seen a team like St. Louis and Utah get back into the thick of things, along with Calgary and Vancouver being there as well. Preston, are you excited for the playoff race and the talk
Oh
playoffs?
yeah. I mean, it's been kind of crazy, since the deadline has passed. Ottawa's been playing really, really well. They're on a hot streak right now, winning four. Dylan Cousins look really good so far as a Senator. Don't tell our friend Chris that though. He might like flip out. Um, Detroit's got a free falling right now. Interesting to see that. Yeah, I'm really excited about this playoff race, though. It's going to be a lot of fun. Even the West. You said the Western Conference is heating up a little bit. Utah and St. Louis getting back in that conversation uh, for a playoff spot. So it's going to be really fun, like next few weeks. Because it's wild to think that we only have like 4 or 5 weeks left of NHL hockey before the playoffs start.
It feels like just yesterday
Mm-hmm.
the season opened up in Prague between the Devils and Sabres in back-to-back games on that weekend, which
Mm-hmm.
now feels like I don't know. It's crazy how fast the season moves along. And you brought up the Detroit Red Wings
Yeah.
because last year they missed the playoffs by actually they missed by tiebreaker to
Yep.
Washington. And now this year, it looks like maybe it was their year to break it. Maybe it'd be them in Ottawa both entering the playoffs and at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The Detroit Red Wings, man, lost 6 straight games. They have not played great hockey whatsoever.
Yeah.
Goaltending has not been good. Their stars just haven't shown up, and it's been just brutal hockey to watch. And now they're just barely above 500, 66 points in 64 games, and now sit 4 points out of a playoff spot as of this recording.
Yeah, as we're recording right now, they're getting ready to play the Sabres about 7:15 p.m. Eastern here. So they're getting ready to play the Sabres in about 20 minutes on TNT tonight. So that's a must-win game for them. So if they lose tonight, it's panic time, I think, in Detroit. Because at this point, they're 4 points out of the last playoff spot behind Columbus. Play the same amount of games. They don't have much margin for error left. I'd say that maybe they can lose 5, 6 games, maybe max the rest of the year. And and you're also depending on the teams above you not playing as well either, because Montreal's been playing really well, and Boston and New York are still in that conversation as well. We'll see if Ottawa can use this hot streak to kind of pull ahead of the other wild card teams and kind of take the pressure off themselves. But yeah, right now there's all the pressure in the world's on Detroit, because if you think about this, like if they even win half those games in that losing streak, they're in a playoff spot right now, and
Yeah.
we're having a completely different conversation. This should be the year the Red Wings break the playoff drought. I picked them to pick the playoff drought. They have a good team, but I think goaltending has been a really, really big issue for them. I do want to highlight some stats. From the last month, since I don't know if it's before or after the Four Nations break, but these are their leading point getters in the last month. Patrick Kane is leading the team right now with 9 points in that last stretch of games, which, Patrick Kane's first ballot Hall of Famer. No disrespect when I'm saying this, but Patrick Kane should not be leading your team in points.
In the big year of 2025.
Yeah, like he should be like a really good second option, not the leader of the pack. And good for Kane, he still got it. I knew he still had it, but that's pretty bad. And then DeBrincat, 7 points. He's a -7, which that's real bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he's getting some points, but his line's getting scored on almost every game. And
And
yeah, and then Raymond also with 7, Larkin with 6, Compher with 4, also a -6 in the goaltending. Like I said, it's been abysmal. Cam Talbot in his last 6 starts, 1-4-1, 871 save percentage, and Alex Lyon only played 3 games, 1-2, 870 save percentage. That is not good enough.
and not only are they basically shooting themselves in the foot with their poor play, but also their remaining schedule after tonight just gets tough for
It's
you.
tough. Yeah.
You go to Carolina and then play Vegas, Washington, Vegas again, Utah, the Avalanche, and then the Senators. And even after that, you play the Bruins. Even though they still at the deadline, we'll get into in a little bit. They still are a pretty solid team. The Blues, who are back in the playoff race, they're 7-1-2 in their last 10. And then the Hurricanes, and then you ended off with the Panthers. And then I know I'm going through the rest of their schedule, but then
Yeah.
you end up playing the Canadians, whatever. And then you play the Panthers again, and then the Lightning, and then the Stars, and then you have the Devils and the Maple Leafs. The schedule it does not have a break of games where you're like, you know what? We don't have to play our best hockey, and we can win the game. You get the Panthers twice, the Hurricanes twice, Vegas twice. You get Dallas. Like, you're just playing so many top contending teams in the league, and this is where if you think you're a playoff team, you go out and you win. You get 55% of your points in this stretch.
Well, the problem is also during this 6-game losing streak, two of those losses are the Blue Jackets, and one of those losses are the Senators. So teams you're directly competing with, you're losing to in regulation. So that's another big issue, because when you're playing these teams, you got to beat them in regulation. There's no you don't want to give them a point. And Ottawa and Columbus took care of business. They play Ottawa again in a couple of weeks. That could be a big game, depending on if Detroit gets their head out of their ass. By that point, Detroit might be pretty much out of it. We'll see on that. But an interesting topic. I was watching the hockey guy. Shout out the hockey guy. I doubt he watches our videos, but he's probably too busy making videos all day. I don't know how that dude operates. It's kind of insane. Yeah. So he brought up an interesting point that I thought would be good to discuss on here, and that is regarding Dylan Larkin. So the Red Wings captain, one of the pillars of the organization right now, and he is really interesting to me because I never really thought about this before. I mean, I don't really think about the Detroit Red Wings too often, to be honest with you.
Don't blame you.
But in his eyes, he didn't see Dylan Larkin as a number one center, and I kind of tend to agree with him. I think Dylan Larkin, if Dylan Larkin is your second line center, the Red Wings are a playoff team. Like, don't doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if he's good enough to carry, to be that number one center, and I think that is been the biggest issue for them so far.
Dylan Larkin, I brought this up to you last night during our one of our meetings to prepare for the episode. If Dylan Larkin is your second line center, chances are you're going to be a playoff team. You are going to end up in the playoffs, like you just said. If Dylan Larkin is your first line center, like your long-term first line center, you're going to be an average team, or you're going to be like a playoff bubble team at best.
And that's no disrespect for Dylan Larkin. He's really good. He's one of the fastest players in the league. He's amazing. But I don't know if he just has what it takes, to be a number one center. And I think that's something the Red Wings are lacking right now, because you have DeBrincat and Lucas Raymond, who I think Lucas Raymond he's still developing. He's still a young player. Mm-hmm. I know he's great, but he's still 22 years old, so he's still going to keep getting better. And then Alex DeBrincat, those are two top line wingers right there. You got to get an elite guy to play in between them, And JT Comfort is a second liner for them, third liner. Their center depth, is an issue.
Their center depth has been an issue pretty much ever since Yzerman. Jesus Christ, I don't know why I said it in 2 syllables, but Yzerman took over as GM, and that's the one thing. Like, going into the offseason, your priority should not be let's get a number one center. It's a need, but I don't think it's priority.
They don't grow on trees,
right?
Free agency. There's not a number one center on the market.
Right. So you just stick with Larkin in that case. But I think their number one need, again, going into the offseason for about the 25th straight fucking year, is get another defenseman outside of Seider and Edmondson, and then just go get a bridge goalie until Costa is 100% ready for the NHL. You don't need to go out and sign like a goaltender to a 6x6. Just go out and get a goaltender, sign him to like a 2x3.5 or $4 million deal. I don't know a goaltender off the top of my head that they can go after, but they had an opportunity last year in which, going into the offseason, I thought maybe if Lankinen hit the open market, which he ended up doing, that they should take a run at Lankinen and sign him to like a 2 or 3 year deal and just use him as like a bridge gap until Costa is ready. They decided not to do that. They brought back Cam Talbot, which I thought he's had a pretty solid season.
They did trade for Peter Mrazek.
Look, a game changer there.
I still don't understand that move at all. Trading for Yeah, I don't get
Eiserman
it.
just wanted to be involved in the trade deadline sweepstakes. And
And you,
then,
you trade away Joe Valeno, which doesn't make any sense to me either. I mean, I know he's not the greatest player, but
I mean, for Peter
for Peter
Mrazek,
Mrazek, like,
no, give me a
yeah, I
break.
don't get it.
And just the rest of their goaltender in general, like Alex Lyon, again, he's in the same boat as Cam Talbot, where you can get good games out of them, but they're not gonna give you anything
Hmm.
special in terms of goaltending. They're not gonna win you games, but also they might lose you a game here and there, but they're not gonna lose you a ton of games. They're not like a Ville Husso, which he was just completely god awful to start the season. So
Yeah,
I think those are their two needs, and then of course there's always room for improvement in the forward group. Like you can always get better depth unless you're basically the Dallas Stars or Florida Panthers at this point. And I think they need to start building a better foundation, not a foundation, but a better depth around these guys because you have the foundational pieces like Raymond, like Larkin, the Brinket, and Insider and Edvinson, but there's not a ton of pieces around them except the guy like Patrick Kane, who he shouldn't be your fourth point scorer on your team at the age of what, 34, 35, 36, whatever he is in his mid 30s
he's
right now.
36. Yeah,
Okay, 36. Like, come on. And Tarasenko right now is your sixth leading point scorer at 25 points.
Tarasenko ain't what he used to be. He's just
No,
a
he's
role
not.
player now. He's not going to get.
I think
I don't even know if he's a 20 goal scorer
no,
anymore
he's
in this
not,
league
which
anymore.
which
He
sucks.
10, 15 goals is a good year for him now. But yeah, he's a secondary player. He's a depth piece, a nice to have.
Correct, and I that was kind of me more taking a shot at Eiserman not being able to build, like not
I mean, they're paying
building
him
his team,
4.7, so they're paying him to
but
score, and
also
I think he has 8 goals this year. Yeah,
yeah, he has eight, but also a guy like Tarasenko, who by the way is way past his prime, should not be your sixth leading point scorer, and your sixth leading point scorer in general should not only have 25 points this late into the season. Maybe
they're
I'm
way
being
too top heavy.
yes,
Their
they're
bottom six
very
does not really contribute to their team at all. Because I have Dylan Larkin and Alex DeBrincat on one of my fantasy teams, and every night they play, they get points because they're the main line that scores. I think that's really evident with Lucas Raymond, being, I mean, Alex DeBrincat being a -7 in that stretch of games and having 7 points. They're scoring, but they're getting scored on. And you look across the lineup and there's no one else really contributing. So that makes a lot of sense. They're out there a lot.
it also it makes sense too because like you said, they don't have a third or fourth line that can go out there and shut down the opponent's top line like some other playoff teams do. So then now when the other team's top line is out there, you throw out Larkin, DeBrincat, and Raymond, which I would match all day, but if there's a face-off in the defensive zone, there's more opportunities to get scored on. And then if Larkin loses the face-off, for example, I mean he's pretty good in the draw in the dot, but he loses the face-off, the opponent possesses the puck in the offensive zone. All of a sudden, everybody gets tired. Puck's in the back of your net. You're -1. I don't like using plus minus, but sometimes it is a stat which you need to pay attention to because
Hmm.
being a -7 with 7 points in 11 games in your last 11 games, I think for me that speaks more volumes to he had that top line has almost little to no support offensively or defensively. So even though they're going all out on offense, their defense is taking a major hit and is taking a toll on the team. And I think that again circles back to Eisman, and I think their coaching with Todd McClellan has been much better since he ended up getting hired right after Christmas. So I think the offseason, this is a big offseason for Eisman, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with bringing in Tom McClellan, I think that kind of did add some life support to their season. Because when they fired, who was their other I don't
It
remember
was
his name.
I'll look that up for you real quick.
But yeah, they've been a very streaky team all year. I remember when Tom McClellan took over, they went on this crazy streak that kind of brought their season back from the brink. 'Cause they were really bad. They were up there with Buffalo to start the season. Like they were bad, and McClellan's brought him back. But I don't know if he's a good long-term option as the coach. I think Detroit might be better off weighing their options this summer when it comes to looking for the permanent position to fill. I believe he's still carrying the interim tag, so they don't have to hire him. He's not under
No,
contract for
no, no,
next
no,
year.
no, no. He is. They sent him to a multi-year contract.
Oh, never mind then.
Yeah. So
I
he's
guess he's
stuck.
part. I guess that's part of the Iser plan.
Sorry. Yeah, and then they ended up firing Derek Long. They started
Yeah, Derek,
13-17
that
and
was his
4.
name. I remember people were like, he was like a sleeper pick for coach of the year this year.
Yeah, and everybody thought, like, including me or you, were like, you know what, the Red Wings, this is the year they're gonna get into the playoffs, and they just got off to the
Hmm.
horrible start. And Eiserman's like, yeah, we got McClellan out there, they thought was a better option,
McCall is not a
paying him.
bad coach.
No,
I
I
think
think
he's a
he's
good coach
okay.
to like kind of push you to get over that hump. But I think he's not a cup winning coach.
No, and I hope that's Eiserman's plan is to bring in a veteran coach like McClellan that has dealt with older guys, younger guys. He's dealt with the mix of everything in the league, and can put the pieces together. But also, I'm intrigued to see what Eiserman does in this offseason. And I know I keep bringing that up because I'm putting too much pressure on the Red Wings organization and front office to do something.
I
But
mean,
like this team
how big
needs
of
to
a
be in the
leash does
playoffs.
Yzerman have though? Because
It seems like
I
this.
think they have the second longest streak in the league of not making the playoffs. The only team that's been longer has been the Sabres.
Yeah, and it's what the Red Wings last
2016 was the last time they made the
7.
playoffs.
So that'd be what going into their ninth season if they missed this year. That'd be nine
Yep.
straight.
Yeah,
Um,
Sabres are the only team that has a longer streak, I believe.
it feels like the sleet just keeps going on and on and on, and
Like, I get Yzerman's a good GM. Like he built that Tampa Bay team that won those Stanley Cups. Brisbois kind of
mhm.
put together the finishing touches to get them over that Stanley Cup hump, but he put a lot of those pieces in place. But Detroit, every once in a while he makes a wild move, and then he's like, "I'm a genius." Like when he drafted Mo Sider, who everyone was like, "Who the fuck is it?" I remember watching that draft. Even the analysts were shocked. They were like, "Yeah, no, we didn't even have our notes ready for this guy. Give me a minute. I gotta pull my notes up."
Mhm.
Because they weren't even in the realm of thinking that he was going to be picked there. And Sider's actually kind of gotten worse every year since his rookie year, which has been interesting. Uh, just from a numbers points wise, he's probably roughly going to have the same amount of points he's had the last couple of years of 42. His best year so far has been his rookie year.
Yeah.
But he makes a lot of off the board picks, and they tend to end up panning out. But you got to be really patient. And from an organizational standpoint, I don't know how much more patient they could be. I'm not sure where they are in terms of attendance, or I don't have many interactions with Red Wings fans or how frustrated they are. I mean, I can imagine they're pretty frustrated. Especially at least last couple of years, seeing the team get so close and then kind of fall apart right at the worst possible moment, because they went through a stretch like this last year where they should have been comfortably in a playoff spot, and they went on a horrible losing streak and it killed their season.
Yeah, and I went on this podcast last year talking about it's all because Dylan Larkin was hurt, and I was like, that's
Yeah,
the only reason why. I'll eat my words. It was not just because Dylan Larkin's hurt,
I
and
mean he's a plays a part in it.
well, of
I mean, well, I don't
course,
even what was their losing streak last
it was
year? I
eight
think they got the
games. It
double.
was eight
Yeah,
games.
yeah. I remember you and Chris were like, oh, it's just because the Larkin's not playing. I was like, well,
Yeah,
I understand not winning like you're not going to win 8 games in a row without your captain and your best
at
player.
least won like two or three.
Yeah, you're not going to. You shouldn't lose 8 straight when you're
Yeah,
missing one guy.
and
That
not
tells me there's issues with the depth of the team, and I think this has proved that this year.
and now I'm looking at it from a standpoint where last year, if you lose eight straight games without your best player, you don't deserve to be a playoff team. And this
No,
year, like
I think
when
if you lose 8 games in a row, period, you don't deserve to be a playoff team. Very
yeah,
rarely does a team who go through a streak like that end up making the playoffs.
yeah, I mean
Very, very
it's one
rarely.
thing like every team goes through a stretch of games. Well, most teams go through such a games of
Hmm.
losing four or five straight. But to get up to like that 6, 7, 8+ range, like you are you
Those are
really a
season
playoff team?
killers.
Right. Unless
Yeah.
you get off to a ridiculous hot start or this and that. But again, that's very rare, like you said. So I think Detroit, they need to rattle off like their
I
next
mean,
four or
their
five
game
straight.
tonight against the Sabres is a must win.
This
Must,
is
must, must win. You're playing against a bad Sabres team. You're at home. You gotta squash them. This is a good night to get all the demons out and put up 8 goals in the Sabres, because I want the Sabres to get a better draft pick. I want them to get James Higgins or that other center. What's his
Misa.
name?
Yeah,
Misa.
either one is fine by me. I want
So
Misa,
Red
but either one.
Wings, please kick the Sabres ass tonight. But yeah, Detroit, I feel for you. You guys are in a rough spot right now, and they still have a chance. If I would say that if they come out, we can talk about this next Saturday when they're getting back from the road trip.
Hmm.
Actually, I don't know how long the road trip is going to be. Whenever that's over, if they like go like 5-3 or 5-2 or something like that in their next stretch, I think they still have a chance. But if they go 500 or worse, I think it might be it.
So the road trip goes. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4,
So it won't
5.
be over till
So
we record on the 29th, the 26th.
yes.
So
So
we'll
their
check back at
next.
them in a week and a half, see what it is. I mean, if they're losing streaks at like, what are they, 6 now, 7, 8,
Yeah.
9, 10, 11. Is that 12? Their season's over.
Okay. Well, first off, if they reach
Yeah.
like 8 games, I think their season's over.
Yeah. They have
Real
like no margin for
before
error right now.
before we pivot over to our next topic, I want to go through the next 6 games. I'm going to ask you if you think they're going to win or lose. I know it's any given night because shit happens. It's the
Okay.
NHL. But Red Wings, Hurricanes.
That's tough. Because I think in that stretch, besides the Sabres, I think that's their most winnable game, honestly. Either that or Utah. I'm going to say Hurricanes, though.
Golden Knights.
Golden Knights.
Capitals.
Washington.
Golden Knights in Vegas.
Give me Golden Knights again.
Utah.
I will take Detroit in that game.
And then the Avalanche.
The Avalanche might be the hottest team in the league right now.
Oh,
I mean, that's
they
a
are.
week and a half away, but give me the Avalanche.
Yeah, unless
I'm not
something
voting against
drastic
them.
happens, the Avalanche, I think, are
Yeah.
winning that game. I do think if they can get 3 wins out of their next 6 games, they'll be okay.
I mean, it starts tonight with the Sabres. They got to
Yeah.
beat the Sabres, and then they got to beat the Red Wings. You
They
split the
gotta
games with
win.
Vegas, that's a win. Like I'm expecting them to not win both those games against Vegas. If they take one of them, they got to win the one at home. I
Yeah.
think that's the winnable one. It's really hard to win in Vegas. A lot of teams have a really tough time winning there. It's not just them. So, a split with Vegas I think is a win for the Red Wings.
Best case scenario, they beat the Sabres, they beat the Hurricanes, take one from Vegas, and then beat Utah. I think that's the most
that's a
realistic option.
that's a good stretch to
Yeah.
kind of get them out of their funk. But if they're going into their road trip next week, like going to Washington when they start their road trip and they've lost the Sabres, Hurricanes, and Knights, that might be all she wrote.
It's over.
Yeah.
Let's hop into the Boston Bruins here. Sticking in the Atlantic Division. They sold off last Saturday at the trade deadline. They ended up selling off 5 pieces, basically killed their entire roster. And it poses the
Still winning,
questions.
though.
I mean, they won last night. They were down 2-0 last night and won 3-2 against the Florida Panthers, mind you, which they sent Brad Marchand to the Florida Panthers for a conditional second-round pick.
Was Marchand good to play yesterday, and the Panthers just held him out because they didn't want?
No, I don't
we don't want
think
your first game to be against the Bruins.
He was listed as week to week like last week.
Okay.
So
that would be tough to have your first game against your old team.
That would be in
their building. It was in Boston.
It was in Boston. Yeah.
Yeah. That's tough.
They ended up trading away. They ended up acquiring KT Middlesex, but they traded away Marchand, Frederick, McAvoy. No, not McAvoy. Sauer. Coyle. Sorry,
Yeah.
Coyle. And then they traded away somebody else. Hold on.
Yeah. I mean, they made several moves.
Yeah.
Which I think is a step in the also a defenseman. What's his name? They traded him to Toronto. Carlo.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what you were thinking of when you
Yeah.
said McAvoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a good start for the Bruins to kind of, I think when you trade away a player like Brad Marchand, that's kind of like the end of an era.
Mm-hmm.
He was the only guy really, I think, left in the league really, besides like Tyler Seguin and maybe a couple of the other young guys when they won that cup in 2011. He's been a part of that core for forever with Bergeron and Chara and Krejci and all those, and Tuukka Rask and all those guys. Been to all those Cup finals. I mean, I don't think they can go into a full-on rebuild just because of some of the contracts they've given out. Because I think if you have Pasta and you signal to him that you're going into a rebuild, I think he's asking for a trade.
Oh yeah, and you end up just signing Pastrnak to an extension.
Mm-hmm.
You end up signing McAvoy to an extension. You ended up signing in the offseason Elias Lindholm and Zadorov. And with those moves, you're like, you know what? This team's not ready to
all
rebuild.
long-term deals.
And even coming into the season, it was thought that the Bruins were going to be competitive. You get Swayman finally locked up right as the season got going. You're like, you know what? We're in good shape, right? But everything has just unraveled. It's just been a snowball effect all season, and that led to Don Sweeney selling off and trading in most players at the deadline. And I think that they're not going to end up rebuilding. I think that Don Sweeney's going to retool because I think best case scenario for the Bruins is this offseason, you got to figure out what your plan is, right? Sweeney needs to
Yeah.
understand that you can't go
You
through a
think
rebuild
Sweeney
with
is
those.
capable of coming up with a plan, though?
That's true. Is he capable? Because we've seen in the past that he's not. No
Because the one
shade of
thing I'll
Sweeney.
give Sweeney credit for is he's really good at finding players that fit the Boston
Hmm.
Bruin mantra. But I think when you lose your pillars like Bergeron and Krejci and Marchand, it kind of they especially Bergeron got rid of a lot of gaps on that team. And then obviously last year, Krejci and Bergeron both retiring. Their center depth was awful, but they were so good defensively and had such good goaltending. Pasta had a monster season last year. They were able to make up for it. And then this year, you get average goaltending. Your defense isn't that great. That's a door contract has not been good. Lindholm is not a number one center like you're paying him to be. And you end up trading Charlie Coyle, one of your more consistent players, but he's like a third line center, second line center, and a pinch at best. They have no center depth. Like that's been, and when you're getting average goaltending, you have not great centers, and your defense isn't top 10. You're gonna have a tough time winning.
Yeah, and I think the plan, going back to the plan over the summer, is you got to find a way to retool around this team. And if you're the Boston Bruins, the perfect plan is whatever Sweeney comes up with in the offseason, you have to understand that next year you're probably going to be not that great. And I think that's okay. I think if teams if they end up going through a retool, you'll go a year or two without being that great team that you have been for the last decade plus. But then the following season after, you need to be looking to make strides. Can a guy like Matthew Potras end up coming in? I'm sorry if I butchered that, Bruins fans. Can he
Mm-hmm.
come in and give you that production that you're looking for? Can a guy like Mason Lohrei be able to take that another step? Can a guy like Peak, who will be 28 by that time, will he be a good second line defenseman and give you 20 minutes a night if he isn't already? So I think a lot of it does rest on Jeremy Swayman's shoulders too. He
Yeah.
has not played good hockey at all this season, and it's okay for Bruins fans to admit that. And I get he's a goaltender of the future. You have your tandem locked up for the minimum of the next 3 to 4 years. So next season, you're not going to be good. The following season in 26-27, look for the Bruins to possibly be a playoff bubble team again. I'm not guaranteeing that because, again, I don't know what Don Sweeney is cooking up in his office, probably burning down the entire building. But you never know.
I mean, in my opinion, with the Bruins, I think they're gonna have a tough time, even if like Swayman starts to play better. They're best a playoff bubble team, wild card team, first round exit.
Talking about
They
right
will
now.
not. Yeah, well, I mean, just enjoy. Like let's say they go into next year.
Yeah.
I highly doubt unless they swing for the fences and make some ridiculous trade to get a number one center, which is not going to happen because there's a reason there's none available because teams do
Hmm.
not let them leave. They will pay whatever they need to keep them in in their team. Very rarely does a true number one center make it to free agency or is made available on a trade. Swayman bounces back next year and has more as Jeremy Swayman like numbers we've seen the last few years. They do have the potential to maybe be a playoff bubble team. They're not bad. Like this you can't like I can't look at this roster and say it's the worst roster in the league.
Hmm.
Um, but on the other hand, like they're not going to win the playoffs. They might
No,
win a couple games in the
I
playoffs if they're lucky.
if they get in, their first round exit, they're
Mm-hmm.
losing in 6 games max. I think.
Yep.
I
They
mean,
can't score.
no, they can't score, and they can barely keep the puck out or not. Honestly, they're lucky that they're at 68 points and 2 points out right now of a wild card spot. I mean, they're at a minus 27 goal differential.
Yeah. No. Like I
That's
said,
not good.
you're getting average goaltending and the defense isn't that good, I think that's a door of contract's a joke. By
Yeah.
the way, dude's a moron. Just goes and hits people and doesn't give a fuck about anything else.
Takes a ton of stupid penalties too.
He only has 126 penalty minutes this year.
Only is
No big deal.
crazy.
Yeah, only
I
only two whole games in the box.
I want to get over to the Marchand stuff
Yeah.
because they made a decision to trade him to a conference rival, a division rival at that, the Florida Panthers, and apparently the Bruins offered him $6.3 million, and Marchand wanted 7.5 a year, and the Bruins would not meet Marchand halfway in that deal.
That's
Do you
ridiculous.
think
For
that's
that,
ridiculous? At the
for $1 million more, just sign him.
sign him,
He's your captain.
or even be like, yeah, we'll sign you at 6.8, meet in the middle. Like that's not bad if you get him
That, but
under
7.5. I know he's getting old, but the cap's going up. Just do it. He's gonna play for like 2 or 3 years more max.
And then that 7.5 is going to be like the 6.3 in a year and a half. Like,
Yeah, no,
give
that's
me a break.
stupid.
That's stupid.
Yeah,
But like now,
like I
though,
said,
Marchand can go win
can
another cup.
Sweeney come up with a plan? Is he mentally capable of doing it?
Man, I've heard some Bruins fans want that dude out of office like ASAP. And that's
Yeah, no, I mean,
besides
I've
the
never
Marchand
thought he
stuff.
was a really good. The dude seems to fall forward sometimes, which isn't a
Like,
bad trick.
come on,
Like,
okay.
the bad thing to have happen to you sometimes, but
But also though, okay, the stuff with Jeremy Swayman, they avoided arbitration, which looked like a great deal. It's like, okay, they're making progress on a deal. They'll get one done by the starting training camp. We all thought, every single media analyst, including ourselves, were like, Swayman deserves an 8x8. You want to know what the fuck he got? An 8x8. It did not need to take 3 goddamn months to get that
I
done.
mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that what he was asking for the whole time?
He was asking for I think he started off at 10, but everybody starts high, and then the team will start low.
You start
and then
with, you start with
right,
like the highest offer, and if they take it, like, oh shit, yeah, sure.
right. But now it doesn't take you 3 months to meet in the middle. Come on now.
Oh yeah, especially after when they traded Allmark away, that was stupid.
Yeah, it was.
Like, okay, we're gonna trade away our goalie, so now all our chips are on you, and we don't have you signed yet. So you have all of the power in the negotiations now.
It was smarter to just wait until you had him signed, even if it happened after July 1st. And apparently their worry was that Allmark was going to submit a new list, which he had to by July 1st, and it was going to have the team that they wanted to trade him to. Who the fuck cares? That's just me, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think the Swayman contract is even that bad.
It's
still,
not.
like, I think he'll be better.
Yeah.
It's up and down. Get some better defensemen in front of him, and I think he'll play a little bit better too. But I'm just curious. Have you played chess before?
I have not in about like years.
Well, when you're playing competitive chess, there's a rule that once you touch a piece, you have to play it. Like,
Okay.
you can't put it down, and that's pretty much what Don Sweeney did with the Swayman thing when he moved Allmark. Is he picked up a piece, realized, fuck, I don't want to do this, and then Swayman was like, you can't put it down, you're stuck, you got to play it, and that's what. So he ended up having to do something. But I don't know if that's a good analogy, but that's how I see it.
It was a decent one. It was a decent analogy.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, Sweeney seems to do that. It tends to work out. But honestly, since Bergeron retired, this team's failure has been down the middle, and it hasn't gotten better. It's gotten worse.
And their pipeline hasn't been great either.
They sold the farm the last few years because they were all in because they had the best season in regular NHL season history.
Yeah, and you didn't need those first round, second round picks. I mean, you ended up giving. I think they gave up a first round pick for Orlov during that record breaking season. He clearly didn't resign with the Bruins. And even during that record-breaking season, or even part of last year, I didn't think that they would be in the situation where they would actually need those draft picks. To be honest with you, I mean, they're just in a tough situation because you end up acquiring I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry, but the guy that you guys ended up acquiring from Minnesota over the trade deadline, who is a very solid center prospect. But outside of that, though, like they got no prospects coming up in the pipeline that really get me excited for it.
I mean, one more thing I want to say about Don Sweeney. So he's been the GM since 2015. And I've thought this dude was an idiot ever since the 2015 draft when he had 3 first-round picks in a row, and 2 of them are not even in the NHL anymore, and 1 is no longer a Bruin. When those picks were Jacob Zabril, Jake DeBrusk, and Zachary Senshin, and the next 3 picks after that were Matt Barzal, Kyle Connor, and Thomas Chabot.
Bro could have had 3 franchise centerpieces on his team.
Oh,
Although,
if they even get 2 of those, if they just get Barzal and Kyle Connor, they're cup contenders right now.
when did they draft Pasta in 2015 too?
I think 2014.
2014. Okay.
Yeah, but
So
that was a good pick, but Sweeney was not the
nope.
GM. That was Shirelli was still the GM.
Yep. Didn't even know
No,
he was a
Don
Bruin
Sweeney
GM
has
until
not been
you-
a very good drafter.
I mean, does that fall more on Sweeney or the scouting department, or a little bit of everything? I mean, doesn't he bring in the
I'm going to
scouting
put the
department?
onus on the general manager because the general manager is the one who hires the scouts.
Yeah,
He runs
yeah.
the front office. It's his job to oversee everything, and he has the final decision
Yeah.
on
that-
every choice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that falls on him. If his scouting department sucks, that's on him for hiring the
Well, they
wrong
didn't even
staff.
move up to make if you have 3 first-round picks, move up into the top 10 and get a really good player. And they didn't even do that. They picked 1 okay player and 2 busts.
Yeah, and they ended the Jake DeBrusk walked in free agency over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
So
And he's like okay. He's not an amazing player, but he's
yeah,
not bad.
he's a solid middle 6 guy for you at best.
Yeah, but when Matt Barzal and Kyle Connor, especially the 2 picks after your 3 in a row,
That
yeah.
you are rough. All right, so let's stick with the Atlantic Division.
Sure.
So, personally, the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Atlantic Division, I think that they need to win the division in order to have a shot to get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
It makes it easier
Yeah.
for sure. I think at the end of the day, if Toronto really wants to do anything, they have to go through the Florida Panthers. And I think that is the biggest reason why you can't believe that Toronto can actually do it this year, because Florida is their kryptonite.
Yeah, and hold on. Okay, sorry. I thought your camera froze for a second.
No, I'm just very
okay.
still.
So, yeah, with the Maple Leafs, there's a very, very hard path to get to the Eastern Conference Finals alone if they end up having to go through Florida in the first round, or let's say in this case Tampa Bay, because I don't think Tampa's getting the first spot, but you never know. Let's say you have to go play Tampa Bay, and then let's say you get past Tampa Bay. Now you have to play a Florida team, which is probably winning the first round matchup in 5 games, let's say, because I think that team is so deep. And
I mean, I would
dominant.
love if Florida had to play Ottawa and get the Kachuk brothers playing, assuming Matthew's healthy.
Yeah.
That would be a really electric first round series, Ottawa versus Florida.
And then you end up getting a Marchand, Sam Bennett, Matthew Kachuk against Brady Kachuk, Timmy Stützle, Sanderson, Shabbat, like Dylan Cousins. Like I had to throw.
That'll be a great series. Yeah.
It'd be a phenomenal series. And
Yeah.
Toronto, they've had. I did some research earlier today while at work, and Toronto in they've made the playoffs the last 8 years in the Austin Matthews era since 2016-17 his rookie year.
Uh-huh.
They have been to a game 7 5 times. They have lost all 5 times. Their only playoff series win was in 6 games against Tampa Bay in 22-23. Got smacked by Florida in 5 games the next time. They have faced in their last 3 outside of Boston. So it went Montreal, Tampa Bay, and Florida. They lost to Montreal in 2021. It was like that. It was the North Division.
I think they were up 3-1.
They were up
3-1. Yeah, that was bad.
Then they lost to the eventual Eastern Conference champs in Montreal. Same thing to Tampa in 21-22. They lost in the finals as well. And then I believe Florida I think Florida. And then they
went
lost
to the Stanley
Florida.
Cup final. Yeah.
Yeah, they went to the finals and then lost against Vegas. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a tough road right there. And they were all second or third in the division during that entire.
Yeah, Toronto's been. I'm a hater of this playoff format. I think Toronto's been the biggest victim of this playoff format ever since the lockout shortened season in 2012 when they came out of the lockout. The NHL did the divisional realignment, moved Columbus and Detroit to the Eastern Conference to get ready for expansion. Yada yada yada. You know, Toronto has been. I don't think they've ever won the Atlantic Division since its inception.
Correct.
It's either been like Tampa Bay, Florida, Boston. Trying to think of Montreal might have won it 1 year or something like that. But they've always been stuck in that 2 or 3 spot, and they end up having to play the same teams over and over and over again. I believe they played Tampa Bay 2 or 3 years in a row in the first round. They played Boston at least 3 times in the first round since that playoff realignment. And they always get screwed by it. So Toronto fans probably hate this divisional bracket series, and they just wanted like, no, we do not want to play Tampa Bay because um, I mean, they would be playing Tampa Bay if they had the regular playoff format, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's. I'm going through, like, I was going through the standings since the Atlantic Division became an actual thing, like in the new playoff format.
Hmm.
Only Florida, Tampa Bay, Montreal, and Boston have ever won the division.
Oh, I was right.
So there you go.
Well,
Toronto
pretty
has
much
never.
since that division existed, the Sabres have been dog shit, and the Red Wings have been dog shit. So,
The Red Wings were good for like
and,
the
and
first
Ottawa,
5 years.
was okay every once in a while.
Well, Detroit, they were actually good for like the first 4 or 5 years, and Ottawa had some good seasons, including the Eastern Conference Finals run against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean
And
Buffalo was always ass.
yeah, Buffalo's always ass.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so I do think that it's most beneficial to Toronto if they win the division, and I think it also kind of feels like that in the Central Division as well because right now Winnipeg, I thought they were running away with it, but Dallas has clawed their way back and gotten within. I think it's still 6 points the lead. Yeah, yeah, it's still 6 points. Yeah, Winnipeg's at 94 in 66 games. Dallas is at 86 in 64 games. So I think that it feels like it's Winnipeg to lose, but if Winnipeg starts to go on a little bit of a skid in Dallas, which is 8-2 in their last 10, if they can go on a little bit of a run, look out. Dallas might catch up to them, and then you have Colorado. They're sitting at 81 points in the third spot. So I think right now it's looking like it's going to be Dallas, Colorado in the first round, and that means that Winnipeg would have to go up against a team like Vancouver or Calgary, or if St. Louis or Utah somehow sneaks in and takes that second spot from them.
Oh,
So
Winnipeg should win the first round. Yeah, they should. If
right. Then you get a Dallas or Colorado team which got beat up a little bit in the first round by one of those two teams. All of a
Mhm.
sudden, you can pounce on an opportunity to beat up on a weaker opponent, and now all of a sudden you're in the Western Conference Finals, Game 1, in your barn in Winnipeg, playing, let's say, against the Vegas Golden Knights or Edmonton Oilers. And now I think the Winnipeg Jets are much stronger than the Knights or Oilers. They'd win in
I
6, 7 games in that.
I mean, if I'm the Jets or the Dallas Stars right now, my number one objective is to avoid the Avalanche in the first round at all costs.
Yes.
I've been saying this, at least to ourselves since the deadline. The Avalanche, I think, after the deadline, might be one of the scariest teams in the league. The way they've completely rebuilt that roster after trading Rico Manton, and they gotten better, honestly, because they have way better depth now. Way better depth. I mean, they were like probably the biggest buyers at the deadline this year. I think one of the clear-cut winners this year of the deadline. Them, Florida, and Dallas brought in Mikko Rantanen. That would be a fun first-round series too, having Mikko Rantanen go home.
Yeah. I mean, the Avalanche are 7-2-1 in their last 10. They look
Oh yeah,
phenomenal. They really do. You have to avoid that team at all costs. If you're Dallas, you have to go on a run. If you're Winnipeg, you cannot start to drop 3 straight games, which I don't think they've dropped more than 3 straight games all season, so that should not be a problem, especially with Connor Hellebuck playing at an historic level, which personally, I think he should win the Hart Trophy or at least be a nominee because that dude's goals against average is now below 2, which is ridiculous. It's at like 1.99, I think, as of last night, which is it's absurd
that's
to even think
wild.
about.
Yeah.
So in the Western Conference, I do think that the Cup's going to run through whichever team comes out of the Central Division. I think all three of those teams are the best 3 teams in the conference. Call me crazy, but that's just an opinion.
I mean, realistically, like, I think we could agree either Edmonton or Vegas is coming out of the other side
Oh, if they
in the
don't, then
Pacific bracket. I mean, one advantage that either of those teams might have is, like, let's say Dallas makes it to the Western Conference Final, right? They beat Colorado in the first round, and they beat Winnipeg. They might have half their team left.
yeah.
So, I mean, the same could be said about Vegas or Edmonton, because I'm assuming they're going to play each other in the second round. And I don't think that will be a super physical series. That will be a very fast series.
They didn't.
But they might have an advantage where, like, Dallas or whatever team comes out of that bracket is so beat up that they might be playing at half strength just because guys are playing through injuries and playing hurt.
I could see the same thing happening that what happened in Dallas last year. You get into the
Mm-hmm.
Western Conference Finals, you get off to a strong start because you have so much momentum. All of a sudden, you fall flat on your face because you just run out of gas. That's just
I mean, that's what happened. Yeah, they had to play with Vegas in the first round, which Vegas
mhm.
is not a normal 8 seed last year. They got healthy at the right time and they were good. Like if they were playing any other team besides Dallas, I think they win that series, honestly.
Yeah.
And then they had a crazy series against Colorado, and then they go into the Western Conference Final, and they were just exhausted.
They got off to a great start too. They got up to a
Mm-hmm.
2-1 series lead, and then game 4 they went up like 3-0 within the first 10 minutes. And when they were up 3-0 in the first 10 minutes, I'm like, this team's going to end up in the Stanley Cup Finals. They're going to end up probably playing the Florida Panthers. And the exact opposite happened. The Edmonton made
Connor
adjustments.
McDavid said no.
Stuart Skinner got hot, and yeah, the rest is history. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and then also looking at it from like how good do the Washington Capitals have it right now?
They might have the easiest path out of any top contender right now to
I mean,
get
they're
to the
probably
conference
losing the
finals.
first round now that we're saying that,
We're
but
gonna
realistically, because I mean, there's a 12-point gap between them and Carolina for first place in the division. They might have the division wrapped up in a couple weeks. To be
they
honest
will.
with you,
They will.
they are tied right now with Winnipeg for the President's Trophy, so they might not be in the 1 seed throughout the whole playoffs. You're gonna get the worst wild card team, which might be Columbus, Montreal, New York, Boston,
You
Detroit.
don't
One of
want to
those
match up with
teams.
New York.
I think they can handle New York.
I I think New York is a much better team than where they are in the standings right now.
They've
But
been up
carry
and
on.
down all year.
Yeah,
Like I don't trust them to
they
be,
still
be
got
consistent
Igor.
enough.
They still got Igor.
Igor hasn't been that
He
good
can
this
nope.
year.
Come playoffs times, I think he can steal them a series.
I agree with you. He can turn it on, but he just has not been
I
great this
I
year.
I don't disagree with you. He hasn't been great this year, but I do think that if there's one team that I think will fold under the pressure, I'm not saying the Capitals would beat them in a 7-game series, but I'm saying if one team that can beat the Capitals as a wild card team, it will be the Rangers. If they play a team like the Jackets, I
Oh, they
think it's
spank them.
five
Yeah,
it's 5 games max. I
yeah.
think. I think Ottawa would give them a good fight, but that's 6 games max. I think even a team if fucking somehow Montreal or Boston or Detroit sneak in, that's a 5-game series too. So that's just where I'm coming from with
I
that.
think Boston will play them tough just because they're an experienced team and they are
Yeah,
still a physical team. They can kind of grind you down. I mean, I agree. I think the team that Washington will probably want to avoid the most in the first round probably would be the Rangers. And that's just me giving respect to
hmm
Igor Shesterkin and how great he's been the last few years in the playoffs. If they get regular season Igor, like this season Igor in the playoffs, they're losing in 5.
yeah, it's 5 games,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that the Rangers team overall is better than the Capitals. I think the Capitals have a much deeper team and a much better
Mhm.
team. I like you said and like I said, it's Igor Shesterkin. I'm not gonna go up against him.
I mean, he is
Um,
that team.
right. And if I see Igor in game 1 play like how he has most of this season, I'm like this series is already over. In my opinion, I that
I mean, that's if the Rangers remember how to score.
that's true, and that's also if they can
That's a
score
big
five on
if.
five. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
huge if. Are
Yeah.
you gonna get the Rangers team that you know can put up 5 goals in their sleep, or are you gonna get the team that misses wide open nets? Like you don't know. Yeah, I think the Cap. I mean, and then even after the wild card round, the first round, you play a Carolina team most likely that I think isn't as
I
deep
think
as years
Washington's
prior.
better than them. I think, I don't think Carolina's good enough to make it out of the second round this year. I think in a 7-game series against New Jersey without Jack Hughes, I think Carolina might win that in 6 or 7. That would be the most that series I'd be really uncomfortable with picking a winner in because I really don't trust either of those teams.
Yeah, and
Um, and then Washington, I still think the road for the Stanley Cup goes for the Florida Panthers. I still think they're the team to beat in the East, though, and I don't know if they can even beat playoff Florida, especially with all the guys they just brought in. So
mhm.
Washington didn't really do anything at the deadline because they didn't really have any space to do anything.
I mean, I love the pickup of Anthony Beauvillier.
Yeah, that
That
was
was
pretty
that
much it. Yeah,
yeah, that was a good pickup. And I think it's lining up for Panthers Capitals Eastern Conference Finals, no doubt about it. And that would be exciting. That really would be. And honestly, right now, don't know who I'd pick in that series. I would have
I picked the Florida Panthers in 6.
I would have to pay respects, and I'd probably go to Panthers in 6 or 7 games. But if Washington somehow pulled it out of their ass like they have all season, I'd be like, no shock, no surprise at all. So I mean, we'll see when we get to that point. But the
I mean,
the
my biggest
playoffs,
question mark for Florida would be Sergei Bobrovsky, honestly.
yeah, he hasn't been great this season. The Panthers have had to rely a lot on their team up front in front of him this year.
I mean, they're good and they're good enough. Like their forwards are so disciplined. I don't think their decor is anything great. I mean, we haven't even mentioned that Aaron Ekblad got suspended
Yeah,
for 20 games, so he's going to miss the first couple of games of the playoffs. I'm not sure how much that hurts them because you're getting a fresh guy back for a fresh top pair defenseman back for the playoffs. So it is what it is. I'm not going to speak too deep into that, but their backup goalie's Vitek Vanacek, so not the greatest option, behind Bobrovsky, but their forward core is terrifying, especially if they get Matthew Tkachuk back in time for the playoffs, which isn't a given. Um, we don't know the severity of his injury or when he's going to be back. I think the rumor is he should be back for the playoffs,
hmm
but it's not a guarantee.
I
And as
mean,
far as I know, if he's not activated from LTIR before the playoffs start, he's not eligible to play in the playoffs, right?
I'd have to double check that, but I don't know if it's the entire playoffs or I don't know if it's just round
I think
one.
it's the entire playoffs because I'm not sure how that works, but
I'm,
I believe that the player has to be eligible to return from LTIR. I think they can open a window before the playoffs start. I don't know if he has to be on the active roster. I just know that if the player is on LTIR and is not designated to return, I don't believe they're eligible to play in the playoffs.
let's see. Let's see. I don't. There's nothing like there's nothing really like solid on it. Um, I mean, does Puckpedia have everything? No. There's. I can't find anything on it. So if somebody wants to comment on
I'll have it
Spotify
on
or YouTube,
here right now.
you have it. Okay, sick.
Qualify for LTIR, player must be expected to be at least miss 10 games and 24 days of the season. They may exceed the salary cap. The team is can't compliant on opening day. I don't see anything mentioned about the playoffs. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they can just say fuck it and activate and whatever. But I believe that they can. I'm not sure. If someone in the comments knows, please let us know.
Now I'm actually like really curious during playoffs and play. That was complete gibberish.
Oop.
Okay. I got it. I think so. Since there is no salary cap in the playoffs, teams can activate a player off LTIR without cap constraints after the regular season as long as he's met the requirements of LTIR. So I think that he can be activated after no matter what. Like there's no like if he's not activated by this time he can't play. I think he can be activated if he's ready for game 4 or whatever. If he has to miss the first 3
Yeah,
games,
you're
he can
right. It's
play.
because there's no cap space in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The I think the NHL should probably change that rule to make it be more of like, okay, if this guy's on LTIR, you know, before the playoffs start, I think that should
I have
make
a
him
brilliant idea.
ineligible at least for that round of the
I
playoffs.
I think I think for that round, I think each team should go into that round with the NHL roster. That includes your extras and stuff. So if somebody
Hmm.
does end up getting hurt, then you can throw them in. And then I also think that let's say multiple players get hurt, right? And you're down to let's say both of your extras or all three extras, whatever, in your lineup, and somebody else gets hurt. Now you're down a skater. Now you can bring up a player onto your roster, for example, from like your AHL team or
Hmm.
whatever, and put him on your roster then, and that can be an exception. Like I think that'd be okay for the round. So I don't know. There'd be some stuff to work through with the NHL if they wanted to go that route.
Oh
But
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it'll
That,
be interesting to see what they do. I feel like they really do need to do something to address
yeah,
that for
but
teams circumnavigating the cap like that, but I'm not sure how much they could do.
I mean, it gets brought up like every GM meeting during the summer, and the teams and GMs and owners always turn it down. So at this point, it feels like it's just gonna be a loophole for
I mean, if
until
you're the
the end
team
of
that
time.
abuses it, why would you want to get rid of it?
That's true. I mean, most teams abuse it. Like I think half the league uses it, but only a couple get put under the spotlight.
Well, they're the ones that win the cups.
Yes, exactly. Like a team like let's say Chicago abuses it, nobody's gonna give a fuck.
No, but I mean, they have like $70 million
That
in
is
cap
also true.
space.
That was
So
also a very bad example.
like, yeah, that's probably the worst example
yeah,
you could have thought of.
yeah. I don't know. Let's say a team like LA, for example, used it, and they were first round exit. Like, at that point, it's just no one cares. That was probably a better example.
Actually, the Capital, I mean, the Blackhawks don't actually have a lot of cap space.
Oh,
I mean, they
oh,
are eating $9 million in dead cap, but
okay, see, they got 216K in cap. There we go.
but San Jose has $22 million in cap,
Jesus, San
and that's
Jose.
with 5.6 million retained dollars.
That's on what contracts?
Brent Burns, Eric Carlson, and Thomas Hurdle.
Nice, nice. That's going to end it for today's episode. If you guys enjoy all of our content, all of our socials are down below. As well as if you guys are on Spotify and Apple, head over to our YouTube, subscribe, notification bell, and we'll see you guys in our next episode.